Hey guys, it's Shama. Excited for Instagram Live. I love getting on Instagram Live and answering lots of questions. So, today we are going to be talking about how to launch a US market entry strategy. So, actually, I'm just going to pull this down here and pin it so everyone who joins knows what on earth we're talking about. How to launch a US market entry strategy. Okay, awesome. So that is the conversation for today. If you guys have things that you want to talk about, questions, all regarding to this, that is what today's conversation is about. I've got a few different questions that were submitted in from our newsletter. So I'll be going over different opportunities and ways to start to think about launching into the US and how we want to take a look at it. Just to kind of kickstart the conversation, we've been looking here internally about how to implement GDPR and what that really means. And so for a lot of you fashion businesses out there, you should be looking at what kinds of disclaimers and pop-ups you now need to introduce into your website. So I don't know if you guys have been noticing, but you head to a website and it says, hey, we are tracking you, right? Hey, we are taking a look and seeing how you're shopping. We're using cookies. And now these types of compliances are going to be rolled out on a far more wider reach, and you're not going to be able to be operating your site without having these kinds of disclaimers and disclosures. So guys, please read up on GDPR. Number one, make sure that you've got a disclaimer that pops up. And then number two, take a look at your email service provider. Chances are you might have to either have your subscribers re-opt in. So you might be seeing a lot of people even writing to your inbox saying, hey, please double opt in or make sure you want to receive this. Or you might need to be adding some other kinds of capture, other kinds of disclosure checkboxes for your newsletter. So guys, lots of changes. Thanks, Europe, for all of these GDPR initiatives. All right, so let's dive into today's questions. Again, the main topic is how to launch a US market entry strategy. Just so you guys know, as far as like foregrounding the conversation, we at Scaling Retail have worked with a lot of international companies that are looking to launch into the US. And some of the most interesting things that I've found that can really be helpful to you are, number one, starting to take a look at who your touch points are in the United States, meaning do you have local PR? Do you have a social media manager that's in the US? Do you have do you have a distribution center in the US? So you need to start to ask yourself, what are the kind of US touch points that I have for my business? And funny enough, guys, this also extends even if you are still in North America, but your business is in Canada. This is also an important thing to consider, mostly because when you look at customs and import duties, you want to make sure that if the majority of your, let's say, clients or direct to consumer businesses, consumers rather are based in the US, that you're able to take advantage of better shipping policy, that you're able to take advantage of paying less customs by just having your product here in the US available to send direct to consumer. Also, guys, same thing goes for wholesale distribution. So if you notice that a lot of your wholesale business accounts are based in the US, or that's where you're really primarily hoping to get your market share, again, you want to see about having a distribution center or fulfillment center based in the US. Why? Because it makes it a lot easier, right? It makes it a lot more simplified for a retailer to purchase from you if your goods are already here versus having to ship them globally. So just a few different things for you to keep in mind. Let's unpack some questions. All right, so the first question I have here is, what's the best place to look for reliable US help with logistics and other on-the-ground know-how? So this is a really great question. When you start to look at logistics, shipping and logistics, I would say there are two great places that you might want to look at. Number one is looking in New Jersey on the East Coast, Bergen, New Jersey, to be an example. Mostly because a lot of logistics and distribution centers are based out of New Jersey. And then you also want to take a look at Southern California and Los Angeles for shipping and logistics. Not Los Angeles City itself, but Los Angeles County and the surrounding areas there. Now, why is that? Well, Southern California is a huge hub for distribution on the West Coast, and then obviously looking into New Jersey as a great distribution center and hub for the East Coast. And then if you're looking for Midwest, other great areas that you can take a look at would be Atlanta, for example, as another great shipping distribution point. Now, as far as where to find these shipping and logistics centers, now keep in mind, it can be a little bit difficult, mostly because you're thinking about volume, right? So a lot of shipping and logistics centers make money based on the amount of volume that they can get pumping out through their facility. So if you're a small business or you're not anticipating to have huge amounts of orders right away, well, you might be looking at finding a much smaller fulfillment center where the rates might be a little bit higher because they're not actually making as much money per order because they're not pumping out as many orders. I can tell you that different companies, if you do some Google searching, at Scaling Retail, we have a few that we introduce to our clients. We actually have an amazing operations consultant. Big shout out to Cindy with an S. She's amazing. And she's helped a lot of our clients save thousands of dollars on shipping and logistics. But chances are, guys, you're going to have to do a little bit of digging and research to find low volume shipping centers, meaning these are going to be distribution centers that are working specifically with small businesses that do not have high minimums in terms of the amount of volume that they're sending out. When it comes to other on-the-ground know-how, a lot of our international clients have specifically come to work with us because we kind of know the lay of the land in the US, right? So what are the right PR firms you need to connect with? What's the best place in order to get, negotiate with your new social media manager? Or how do you need to rebrand your company in order to be viable for the US market? So that's just kind of something else that I've seen happen on a much more international scale, where you have a brand that can be successful or that can do great things in other markets. And then when it comes to the US market, they're simply oversaturated the market they want to get into. They need to relook at diversifying their product assortment, maybe even think about a rebrand or coming up with the diffusion line. So really evaluate and ask yourself, is my brand, as I look to launch into the US, is my brand actually viable for the market, or do I need to make some tweaks and changes? Okay, next question. Based on current American politics, are there pending laws I should be paying attention to? Yes, guys, there are pending laws. There's all sorts of shit that's happening, right? Number one, think about what's happening with possible trade wars and China. So obviously right now, this does not seem to be a big deal because nothing has really been rolled out officially as far as how it really will impact small to medium-sized companies. But when it comes to manufacturing, and let's say you're a Chinese-based company, you want to be entering into the U.S. market, you might start to face a little bit of some trade barriers in terms of customs and taxes and duties coming into the country. Again, this has not yet been finalized as far as what the direct outcome for small business will look like, but definitely something to consider. Even also if you're manufacturing in China, you're going to want to stay on top of what's happening with, even though the policy that Trump had enacted had to do with steel, you might want to start to take a look at how this might affect other different industries. Next, we also have NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, which again, there's been a lot of controversy around what that means. For people who are manufacturing in different countries and what that means as far as imports and taxes. I can say that if we do make some changes in policies to NAFTA, depending on where you are manufacturing, you're going to want to take a look at possibly relocating those manufacturing points. And then as far as bringing in H-1 visas, really establishing your business here, it can be really difficult to find a U.S. counterpart, especially if you are an unknown brand in a foreign country, right? Any foreign country. It can be hard to land contacts and to land people on the ground who want to go into business with you. And why is that important? Well, obviously, having a U.S. office can do a lot for your business, also in terms of taxes. So depending on where your taxes are based, you may want to look into having a U.S. satellite office. One client, for example, their business is based in Denmark. She is launching a subdivision of the brand. But we are creating a different entity here in the US, and we're going to be folding in the sales into the US entity simply because it is better, right, from a taxation standpoint than from having the business in Denmark from a taxation standpoint. So guys, I'm not a CPA. So like, please verify with CPAs exactly like how this applies to your specific jurisdiction and where you live, and you know what this means for your taxes. But in order to get the established business in the US, you will need to either apply for your own, apply to establish the business yourself. If you are based in the US, you have a US address, you're setting up shop here, or if you are based in another country, you may want to start to make some frequent trips to the US in order to establish potential co-founders or potential people who might want to head up the US office for you, and start to look at setting up a EIN number and your business entity in the United States. Okay, wow, so much to talk about, right? It's like, what a big, heavy question. Okay, next question. What's the best way to figure out which US cities are home to the most people in my target market? So guys, when it comes to analyzing your markets, I would say start to ask yourself, what is my brand DNA and who is my customer truly in the US market? Meaning, where do I think these people live, right? And obviously, if you're coming in from the outside, it can be difficult to know if, let's say, Cincinnati is a possible viable option for you, because from the outside, you've only been looking at places like New York and maybe Los Angeles and maybe some secondary cities like, you know, Austin or Portland, etc. You may not be uncovering a lot of the smaller markets that have opportunities for you. One of the best tips in terms of finding those market segments are to start to take a look at your competitors who are distributing products in the US and start to see what other small markets are they getting into. Looking at your competitors are a fantastic way of understanding positioning, and then also what kinds of opportunities there are for you in terms of distribution. Now, obviously, that's not everything, right? There are other ways in terms of getting market analysis. Personally, here at Scaling Retail, we use a lot of WGSN to start to uncover new emerging cities that aren't necessarily on the top 10. We also do a lot of deep dive and understanding of market analysis using the Audience Insights tool from Facebook. And I know this is kind of a sneaky way to do it, but the Audience Insights tool from Facebook allows you to plug in a certain number of demographics in order to see where those demographics are more, you know, stronger or less strong, depending on different cities that you want to be targeting. Now, another way, and this is a sneaky top secret Scaling Retail thing that we like to do, is we take a look at the growth in cities in terms of what their economic output is. And we like to look to see where the biggest deltas are in terms of growth. Now, what we've oftentimes have found is that, especially these days, when a lot of different smaller cities across the country are starting to do incentive programs in order to keep startups in their communities, right? Not every single startup should move or need to move to New York or to California in order to raise funding and take advantage of what's available to them. So a lot of cities, local cities, are starting to implement different programming, different kinds of tax breaks for startups that stay local. Now, one way of finding that out is obviously doing researching on tech startups and VCs across different, you know, where the top ones are and outside, of course, of the coastal cities, and start to see where they're popping up, right? Chances are there is more activity there, meaning there's more money there, right? There's more happening. So you may want to look at maybe having a footprint in some of these areas where there's more economic growth or potential. But also looking at the delta is important, meaning some cities are actually growing in wealth on a yearly basis, and some are not growing in wealth. And again, outside of coastal cities that we're so familiar with, it's important to take a look at cities and their delta. And trust me, guys, all that information is available online, right? If you look at any of the government census statistics or anything about small business, you'll start to see by city where there is the best delta in terms of economic output. Again, very long and complicated answers. Sorry. Okay, next question we have here. What kind of micro-influencer strategy can I use to launch my brand in the country? So this is also really important. Personally, guys, I would say start to take a look at different kinds of apps that allow you to data mine your own influencers on your Instagram channel. So there are sites out there like PeopleMap, there are other sites out there that allow you to take a look and see what are the top influencers, or where rather are the top influencers that follow me. Now, the great thing about, you know, Instagram is that it is a global platform. However, if you are speaking a different language, right? If you're not writing everything in English, if you're not, using the hashtags that are current, let's say in the US brands, or brands are doing well. Oh, itchy nose, sorry. Brands that are doing well in the US, even though you might be on Instagram, you may not be attracting or finding those people, right? So as you start to tap into micro influencers, it's important for you to start to understand competitively who are the people who are following your competitor brands on Instagram, right? So I would start to take a look at using some third-party software that allows you to take a look and see how your competitors are performing, who are the influencers that they're tapping into, and start to work from a data mining standpoint like that. I have found, guys, that if you do Google searches for anything that has to do with top influencers or top micro influencers, you're not going to actually find the true gems, right? The gems are going to come from a lot of digging. They're going to come from a lot of research, and your top micro influencers should, again, not just be in coastal cities. You should be looking at micro influencers that are actually bigger and smaller markets. Now, why is that important? Having 1 million followers is not necessarily going to get you an ROI. Having 5,000 followers who are actively engaged and who are espousing your brand are going to see a great conversion for you. So I would even almost say, as part of your US market strategy, is to start to identify key influencers in smaller markets across the United States that have the same aesthetic and feel as your brand and branding does. Please do not choose people just because they have followers. You need to make sure that your brand is in alignment with their aesthetic. Once you've identified these micro influencers, shoot them very casual emails about how to possibly collaborate. Hey, I'm interested in working with you, or I love the following you've created, or I'd like to find a way to collaborate. What's the next step? Do you do things like that? So I would start to look at it from that standpoint. I think that will be a lot more beneficial in terms of how you're going to start to get things at a better price. Because usually the follow-up question to this is, well, how much money should I spend for influencer or micro influencer programming? And at the end of the day, guys, it's all kind of a collaborative effort, right? I would never approach someone with the dollar amount in mind. I would always let them tell me what they're thinking and then counter offer with a negotiation tactic in order to bring the price down, if it is something that I think is going to be beneficial. All right, guys, just to catch you all up, the name of the game today is how to launch a US market entry strategy. If you have questions regarding launching in the US, please feel free to bubble them up. I am answering questions that came off of our newsletter, which means, guys, if you're not part of our newsletter, please make sure you head over to scalingretail.com and sign up for our newsletter. Okay. So next question here. What do you think about entering a co-retailing agreement or two to see how my brand responds in America? Okay, so this is really cool. So back in February, I was speaking at Magic, and there were so many international brands there, guys. It was really awesome. And we were talking about co-retailing, and we were talking about the benefits and kind of the drawbacks of co-retailing. Co-retailing can be an amazing opportunity for you to get a physical footprint and touch point in the US. However, you do need, again, to have someone on the ground who's going to monitor it, who's going to go by the co-retailing space, who's going to kind of be able to tailor and make sure that everything is as it needs to be, meaning they're monitoring performance, swapping out products, they're in touch with the people who are running the organization, they're finding out, hey, if you are in Egypt or your business is in Cairo and you're operating on a much different time frame and time zone, well, you do need to have someone who's based in, New York or somewhere else in the country who's going to be able to be on that time zone, reaching out, making sure that everything is as it should be. Because co-retailing spaces, guys, can be quite expensive. You're looking at anywhere between, let's say, $900 to $2,500 a month to rent space. So if you do not, have someone who's monitoring that space, you're essentially just parking potentially thousands of dollars of your inventory in a space that you're spending thousands of dollars for, right? And you're not actually going to make any type of money because no one is monitoring that. The other thing that I would say as far as co-retailing spaces is you really need to make sure that you know what you're signing up for. A lot of co-retailing spaces try to say that they can do lots of things. Yeah, we can do PR for you. Yeah, we can sell wholesale. Yeah, we can sell direct to consumer. Yeah, we can do consulting on positioning. Okay, but what can you really do? Like, who on your team actually has the experience to help you with wholesale and with selling direct to consumer and with positioning and with marketing, right? So you really need to vet, guys, if you're planning on doing co-retailing, you've really got to vet these co-retailing spaces and what it is that you are expecting them to do and what exactly it is you're paying them to do, right? Because it's easy to assume that they're just going to do everything because they say they can, but what can they really do? And I would even say, and this has been so valuable for many of our clients, get on the flippin' phone and talk to other people who they work with. I can't tell you how many times people don't do that, right? They don't get on the phone. They don't say, hey, I'm thinking about hiring this person, or can I get a referral, or are there testimonials, right? Like, who else is out there who's saying, yes, this worked, or yes, this was a great opportunity for me. And guys, I want to say that this kind of advice really just goes across the board, right? When you're thinking about your different opportunities to work with potential partners, to work with marketing agencies, right? To work with PR companies, right? Where is the referral coming from? Can you trust it? And then also, oh, hey, I like waves. Hey there. Can you trust it, right? And are these people going to really be able to do what it is you need assistance and help, right? So I think that those things are all really, really valuable. All right, guys, want to open up to you in case there are any questions or anything else you guys want to throw on the table. Right now, guys, super exciting. We've got clients right now in Canada, in Nigeria, which is super amazing. We've got clients in Bali, Australia, all over the world, right? And so our approach when we start to look at brands like that is not just, hey, like, how do you tap into the US market, but also how do you develop a global strategy, right? You know, I don't know if you guys know, but the first day of Ramadan is today. I think it's today, or was it yesterday? I'm pretty sure it's today. I try to stay on top of all kind of international holidays. Super, super important, right? So it's, let me just verify what today. Yeah, I think it's today. So it's really important that we start to look at how we are positioning the business and the brand in order to be able to capture global audiences, right? I was looking at Net-a-Porter the other day. They had previously done an edit that was for Ramadan. Companies like smaller businesses like AYR, they are doing 11/11 sales, I think it was last year, in honor of Chinese Singles 11/11 Day. So guys, even though you might be a global business and an international company and you're looking to launch into the US, it is very important that you also just take a look at the US as part of a global segment, right? Like really part of something that is much bigger. The biggest growth emerging markets right now are in India and in China, right? Everyone wants to enter the US because there's so much here, especially now with fashion tech companies getting, you know, investment series raises, getting outside investment from companies like, you know, I think it's called Nextseed. And there are so many other kinds of crowdfunding platforms right now that are not Kickstarter that actually allow you to invest directly into the company with assets on the line, getting fundraising. So I would start to say, yes, the US market is really important for a lot of businesses in terms of reaching scale, right? And kind of doing so quickly on almost what would seem like a hockey stick approach, even though many companies have actually been in the game in the US for 5 to 10 years before they actually start to get real significant visibility. So that is very important to think about. However, global markets are huge, right? Companies like Shop that are taking brands in the US and starting to export them to China are equally as important, right? So even though your company might be based in Jakarta, or your company might be based in Singapore, or you might be based in Melbourne, or, you know, another global city, you should not just be looking at the US, but you should also be looking at targeting other potential markets that might be ripe for your product, right? And so I think that that is super valuable, really important information, and start to think about, the cadence of having a global business, right? And what does that mean? Another really cool thing is my one client who I was just mentioning, who's based in Denmark, we were actually doing some A/B split testing when it came to Facebook advertising and Google AdWords. And then also newsletters. And we wanted to do it based on geographical targeting. So she had clients that spoke English, some that spoke that were Swedish, some that spoke Danish, and some that spoke German, right? And so we started to do some segmentation to see what really worked. Guess what, guys? People like it when you pitch to them in their language, right? Like, that's super important. So if entering the US market is important to you, then you should be looking at revising and positioning your brand copy, right? You need to make sure that what you're talking about is super relevant to the consumers that you are talking to. The US market it requires a lot of noise, right? You'll need to arm yourself with a great team of strategists, PR, people on the ground that can help you in terms of connecting the dots with wholesale, and then developing a really strong marketing and advertising strategy to really seed the market. I'll tell you something, guys, and then I'll quickly sign off. But I've seen ugly products or products that I didn't like perform really well. And what does that tell me, right? It tells me there's a market for everything. I've also seen products that I love not perform that well. And what does that mean? Well, there's a market for everything, right? There's a market for something I like, there's a market for something you like, and they don't always have to be the same things, right? But it's very important that when you're looking into launching your business into a different market, that you start to ask yourself, who are the people who are going to respond to my product? It may be different people than who responded to your product in your home country, right? And that is really important to ask yourself. It might be that your price points are expensive for your home country, but are aspirational, right, for the US market. So what does that mean, right? And all of those kinds of questions really do need to be addressed as you start to think about how your brand translates and creates a cohesive global voice, right? It's not just launching into the US, guys, not to do a bait and switch, but it's launching successful global businesses. All right, guys, that is all for me. Thank you so much for tuning in to Instagram Live. If you missed any part of this at all, we're going to be posting it on YouTube. If you are watching this from YouTube, amazing. We love YouTube. It's one of our favorite platforms to host so much content. Guys, we're up to producing like 2 pieces of video content a week. Holy bananas, very exciting stuff. So please make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel to stay on top of all of the amazing content that we are producing. Big hugs. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. And I will talk to you soon. Bye.